Right now, Pittsburgh's best sports show is about to begin. Call us or tweet us. We've got things to talk about on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call.
All right, thanks a lot, guys, and thank you for tuning into the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. I'm Rich Walsh. I'll be joined by Andrea Fillipponi on the other side over to 93.7 The Fan Cam, and we're taking your phone calls tonight, 412-575-2600. You know, it's a big day, a sad day for some, NFL cutdown day. I know a lot of guys are sweating out, hoping not to get the call here today, but a few guys did. I was surprised with maybe one name on that list. I don't know about you. Chuck Clark was surprising for me, and I think he potentially could be one of those guys they asked to stick around and say, hey, we're going to make some moves, procedural moves, potentially with Will Howard and maybe another guy, and we'll get you back on the team, stay in town.
Yeah, they've got a seventh-round corner, Kent from Central Michigan, who didn't play at all, and he had a boot on throughout training camp in the preseason, Richie, and he made the team. I think it's only because they want to slip him through to the injured list, and then they're going to call back James Pierre and or Chuck Clark. And I think the same thing does apply for Will Howard. So that means Skylar Thompson proved himself in the preseason, and they looked at what he did in those 3 games and came to the conclusion they didn't want to just give him away. Probably couldn't trade him. Maybe they weren't looking to trade him. So they want the quarterback depth. But my only issue with this, and I'm not going to make a huge deal out of this yet, Richie, but I'm just going to say it right now. If this is a situation now where it puts Will Howard on injured reserve either for the entire season or a big part of this season, I'm not going to be a fan of that. I want to believe that Will Howard has a chance to defy the odds and be a late-round quarterback who competes for a starting job one day. And I don't think his career would be getting off to a good start if he wasn't allowed to practice at all for the vast majority duration of his rookie year. So, you know, if it was because of injury, you can't do anything about that. But to just make him a fourth quarterback who's not allowed to practice because Skylar Thompson had a couple of good preseason games, I think that's a short-sighted move. You want to make sure you do right by your young quarterbacks, and that would mean putting Will Howard in the best position to succeed, Richie. And I think putting him on IR for an extended period of time when he's not really injured, which Mike Tomlin said yesterday he wasn't, I think that would be a poor decision by the Steelers.
Well, there's no question he has to practice this year. It seems like a waste if he doesn't. Then he's back to being a rookie. So you can't put him on season-long IR, but they have a couple designated to return guys potentially. You could put them on one of those, and you have 4 weeks you sit out. So I could see maybe that happening. Or maybe you slide Skylar Thompson to the practice squad. If there's no takers out there, he potentially could get, a veteran deal on the practice squad, right?
Which I would have no problem with, okay? I know they've not carried a quarterback on the practice squad before, but you've also never had a 41-year-old starting quarterback before who 2 years ago was hurt 4 plays into the season and was done. There aren't many quarterbacks in their 40s who are still playing. Most of them are retired or either on TV or doing their own podcast like Ben Roethlisberger. So I give Skylar Thompson a lot of credit because when he showed up to Latrobe, it looked like he had no chance to make the team. He played well. But I don't think he played well enough to make me feel like he's better than Mason Rudolph, which he's not. And I don't think he played well enough to make me think that Will Howard shouldn't factor into their future plans. So if they put him on practice squad or released him and said, hey, if one of our guys get hurt, you'll be our first call, I would have been fine with either one of those moves, Richie.
All right, a couple other players we're seeing a lot of people talk about. Beanie Bishop one, DeMarvin Leal the other. With the cut of DeMarvin Leal, there's only 2 guys from that 22 draft class, Colbert's last draft class. It's Calvin Austin, who's been injured a lot, and it's Connor Hayward, who has a big brother on the team, too. So, no Kenny Pickett, no George Pickens. That experiment failed. And you can go on and on with that draft being a complete failure.
Well, no doubt. And that was the last one for Colbert, as you said, and I think it was the right time to move on because I think we've seen their drafts better with this configuration of Mike Tomlin, Omar Khan, and Andy Weidel working in unison with each other. DeMarvin Leal is such an all-time bust as far as third-round picks go. He had 1 sack in 3 years, Nobody wanted him. That's why the Steelers released him and couldn't find a trade partner. And, we talked about Kenny on the show last night. It's just now an odyssey for him where he's in a new place every year, nomadic career. And that's what happens when you're a backup, and really you have not proved yourself yet, even as a backup quarterback in this league. Pat Bostic said today on our show, Richie, he thinks Kenny Pickett could end up being Baker Mayfield, where he bounces around a couple teams and then goes on to have a great career. I love Kenny, and I wanted Kenny to do well, and I predicted he would. I was wrong. I do not see Kenny Pickett turning into Baker Mayfield, where maybe either in Vegas or the next stop, all of a sudden he turns into a Pro Bowl quarterback who's throwing 30-something touchdowns a year. I just don't see that in Kenny, unfortunately.
I don't see it either because he's not getting a chance to start anywhere. He's a backup. So as for Beanie Bishop, that's our Penn West University live poll question. Scan the QR code in the right-hand corner of your screen. Should the Steelers have kept Beanie Bishop?
And you are so happy that the guy that wiped his cleats all over that
He's
Pitt
not
logo,
stepping on any Pitt logos anymore.
No, he's not allowed in their facilities. His card doesn't work anymore when he tried it at the door. I don't know. It's done. And look, I didn't think that he would fall off the map this fast. But when you think about it, he's a slot corner, and you have Jalen Ramsey, Brandon Eccles. He's not a guy that is a big special team standout, and he's too small to play outside. So if he's not going to play at nickel, what's the point of having him on the team? I think he's good enough to be on an NFL roster, but he just doesn't make sense for the Steelers anymore, Richie.
All right, real quick before we go to break, is he a practice squad candidate?
Sure. If you can get him on your practice squad, great, because I do think he has depth. If Eccles gets hurt or something happens to Ramsey, he can be a guy that goes in there and plays in a pinch. But I don't know. Maybe I'm overestimating him, but I think a cornerback-hungry team is going to pick him up, and he's going to make a 53-man roster.
No, I agree with you. All right, we got to take a break. I want to talk about wide receiver. I know you threw out a couple names. 412-575-2600 is the number. Taking your phone calls next. Stay right there. All right, welcome back to the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. This is our Xfinity tweet of the night. And you can see the players responsible for 12 of the Steelers' 17 interceptions last season are not with the team anymore. Dante Jackson, Beanie Bishop, Minka Fitzpatrick, James Pierre, DeMonte Casey. So, this brings up a good question. Is that secondary, Pony, better than it was last year?
Oh, no doubt. I mean, on paper, it's way better. I don't think it's close. Now, you do lose Minka Fitzpatrick, and, safety's a little bit of a question mark with Thornhill, who I thought was horrible in Cleveland last year. But he was a part of Super Bowl winners in Kansas City. So, they were able to win and have a great defense with him as a part of it. Slay's 34, and Ramsey needs to rebound off of last year. He was not bad, but he didn't play like an elite corner. I think he still has that in him. And I think Joey Porter, now that it's not all on his plate, can be a better player too. So I like this secondary more. Dante Jackson was just a guy, and Beanie Bishop played as an undrafted corner. So, yeah, I think this is an upgrade over last year's team, and maybe significantly, Richie.
Yeah, I did like Dante Jackson at times. At times he was invisible, though. But I look at it as Jalen Ramsey and a guy like Darius Slay are huge upgrades over Dante Jackson and Beanie Bishop. But obviously, Juan Thornhill is potentially a downgrade over Minka Fitzpatrick, although he basically played center field the entire season. All right, I wanted to get to the wide receiver position because I know that's a hot topic right now. They kept 5, which you thought they'd keep 5 or 6. Are they done with wide receiver? You put out a couple names. You saw a report out there, Aaron Rodgers looking into a receiver in Green Bay and Dobbs, checking in on him somehow. Is he the GM now? What do you think that they do? Do they add someone like that?
Wait, time out. Wait, what happened? He called the Packers himself.
I don't think he called the Packers. There's a report out there from SI that he reached out to a reporter to see if Romeo Dobbs was going to get cut or released. Now, that's a report out of Green Bay that I saw. And I don't even know if that's even like –
he didn't get cut. Romeo Dobbs is still there.
He did not get cut. Dobbs is still there.
Right.
But he's a guy that maybe the Steelers could take a look at. I don't know what it would take to get him. Or I don't know. You mentioned a couple guys on Twitter a little bit ago, too.
Well, those are guys that got cut. I mean, Corley was a big Aaron Rodgers. He was a big fan of the kid. He was a second-round pick or a third-round pick out of Western Kentucky. He was picked ahead of Roman Wilson in that draft, and Rodgers said he was his favorite receiver in the entire draft. Now, the guy made a boneheaded mistake and thought he was in the end zone and fumbled the ball at the 1-yard line last year and really never saw the field again from that coaching staff. He's a very unique player in that he doesn't look like a traditional wide receiver. He looks more like a Deebo Samuel type. So, I mean, maybe that's somebody, Arthur, I know the Steelers liked him in the draft too. They brought him here on a visit. And then the other thing I threw out about that, Richie, is if you bring a guy in from the Jets, that gives you intel on their offense for week 1. Because he might not physically have their playbook, but he's going to know it inside and out and know their calls. So, I think that would make him an excellent candidate for the practice squad if they're able to do that. And Marquez Valdez-Scantling got cut by Seattle, and he looked like he was cooked 2 years ago. He got traded to New Orleans late last year and had 4 touchdowns in 8 games and played very well on a bad team. And we know he likes Rodgers. They were together for 4 years in Green Bay. So these are names of guys the Steelers could pick up for nothing. And hey, my take on it is if the Steelers really liked Calvin Austin, they would have given him an extension this offseason. And if they really liked Roman Wilson, they would have played him ahead of Calvin Austin in training camp in the preseason. And they only did because Austin was injured. So I think they realize they still need help at wide receiver.
Yeah, I hope it doesn't unfold like it did last year, but it looks like it potentially could. Let's go out to Joe in Allison Park. How you doing, Joe?
Hi, gentlemen.
Hey.
Hi, guys. I have a couple of Steelers questions for you. One, is Broderick Jones going to have a good year at tackle? Two, do you want Warren or Johnson starting? And 3, did they make the right move at punter?
Well, I think you could flip a coin with punter, and I know you save a little bit of money having Waitman around instead of Cam Johnston. But, as for the running back, I like Caleb Johnson. I don't know about you, but I'm intrigued by him. And I think potentially he could be, the full-time, I don't want to say full-time starter because they're going to split carries, but maybe getting more production out of Johnson than Warren by the middle of the season.
I think Warren's really good. I think he's got one big problem and one minor problem. The big problem is he fumbles the ball too much. The minor problem is he plays a lot, but he also plays dinged up. He isn't always healthy, which obviously is huge at running back durability. That was one thing Najee Harris was able to do here. But I think when Warren plays, he can do it all. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's really good in pass protection. We see for a smaller guy, he runs between the tackles well. He's got the speed to run outside. I think he's a complete back. Caleb Johnson, I don't think, can catch the ball or help in pass protection. So he's got to be able to run the ball very well on first and second down to pry snaps away from Jaylen Warren. I don't think they're ready to do that. They also have Gainwell they're going to mix in. I'm cautiously optimistic on Broderick Jones, but I'm definitely using the word cautiously. And then I do think they made the right call at punter. I thought Waitman was fine last year. And I'm just surprised that New Orleans wanted Waitman, Richie, allegedly, and they were willing to give up a draft pick. If that were the case, I would have traded him to the Saints and just kept Johnston, if that's true.
Yeah, I would have too. Let's go out to Chuck in Manchester. How you doing, Chuck?
Hey, just wanted to say thank you for taking my call. And, gentlemen, you guys answered a lot of my questions that I had about the Steelers, but I just want both of y'all opinion. What do you think the Steelers will do this year? Will they go 8-8 or will they go to the playoff? That's it.
I think everyone is probably in the same kind of, stratosphere on this one, Pony. I like 10-7. I think they're going to make the playoffs, but in the playoffs, you're going to be going up against a good quarterback, whether it's Buffalo, the Ravens, or Kansas City, and I don't know if you can compete with a high-powered offense.
Well, you better be able to slow them down because of how much you've invested on defense. And I think the Steelers do have, on paper, the best defense in the AFC. I think when everybody's healthy going into the year, I like their defense more than anybody else. The issue I have is with the offensive side of the ball. And I think the jury is still out on Arthur Smith. I think Aaron Rodgers might be too old. I don't think they have much at receiver after Metcalf. I think Warren has a chance to be good, but we went over some of my questions there. And then the offensive line, frankly, the only guy that I feel strongly about, like I know is going to have a really good year, I think is Frazier. And I think the other 4 guys are question marks. And I'll include Sayamalu in there because he's had soft tissue injuries and he's getting older. So that's why I have a hard time saying the Steelers are going to be anything better than average, because even though I love their defense, I think the offense has potential to be bad again based on all the things I just said.
You know, the one upside is Aaron Rodgers. This offense might look a little bit different. It might be more of an Aaron Rodgers offense than an Arthur Smith offense. What would you say? Do you have a prediction yet? Did you figure it out? Are you a 10-7 guy?
No. Everyone says 10-7 and lose the first round of the playoffs. Yeah. And that scares me that like every single person has the same exact opinion on the team, which freaks me out. The over-under win total is only 8.5. So the odds makers are like, what are you talking about with 10? You know, if it was that easy, that number would be 9.5 right now. So that's what kind of scares me and spooks me, is that the people that do this for a living and depend on it for a living don't think the Steelers are as good as the fans and the media do.
All right, we got to take a break. Back in a couple minutes. All right, welcome back to the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. Not a lot of time left here, but we're going to take one phone call. Mike from Evans City. How you doing, Mike?
Hey, Richie and Pony. Thanks for taking my call. Real quick, so, like, this has to be looked at as an all-in move. I mean, this is a Super Bowl or bust move. I don't want to hear one playoff win. I don't want to hear 8.5 games. They got to be thinking Super Bowl or bust. And I'm equating this team with, like, Manning's Denver team.
Yeah, I know what you're thinking here. I don't know if it's quite that team, Pony. I'll let you expand on it.
I don't think it's bust of it or anything. No one's going to get fired if they don't do it, and they're angling for a quarterback next year, and they didn't give up a lot of future picks or assets to build this team. So I think they're looking at it like, if it happens, great. If it doesn't, well, then the draft's here in Pittsburgh, and we'll find our quarterback then.
All right, thanks a lot, Pony. By the way, should the Steelers have kept Beanie Bishop? Fans have spoken. 69% said yes. All right, thanks, Pony. We'll see you next week. Hopefully we see you on KDKA News
Richie.
right now.